Good morning to everyone who is watching. Welcome to the third webinar on last mile. Today we are going to talk about technology implementation along the last mile, and we have some very interesting people who are joining us. The first one who I'm just about to bring on the stream is Vince Martinelli, head of product and marketing at RightHand Robotics. Uh, Vince, good morning to you, and thank you very much for joining us.
Good morning, Nick. How are you today?
I'm fine, thank you very much. As I said, Vince is from Right Hand Robotics, and he's going to continue on a topic that we've been talking about during the last two webinars, which is fulfillment, micro fulfillment, and also automation in the last mile. And I will also bring your shared screen. Vince, thank you very much, and the stage is yours.
Okay. Well, good morning, everyone. Thank you, Nick and Logistics Point, for the opportunity to speak with everyone today. It's a lot of exciting things going on in the last mile. We'll try to touch on a few topics here that I hope will be interesting. As Nick said, I'm responsible for product and marketing at RightHand Robotics. And just a real quick background on me, I've been engaged in new product development and emerging businesses for a number of years across multiple businesses, many of them involved in some type of networking, whether that's telecom, power grid, or even e-commerce, where I got involved early with a company called Kiva Systems. Some people may have heard of it. And then later on, that was acquired by Amazon, and we helped transform their latest gen fulfillment centers, which now have these robots moving around and so on, which, again, I can tell you 15 years ago was an unlikely outcome. Nobody really believed that was possible. So anyway, as we go through the presentation today, I like to draw some parallels between various networks I've seen over the years, also look at the differences. Some of this is relevant, I think, as we look at the last mile. The last mile has a certain mystique to it, an aura to it, I think, in an on-demand world. How retailers and logistics service providers respond when the customer clicks order, like I could do on my computer right now, this becomes increasingly important. I think we all agree. So we'll get the first slide going here. Okay, so first off, just bear with me for a moment, because once upon a time, I'll tell you this story, we all worked the last mile for free. We drove to stores. We walked around gathering the items that we wanted to buy. Sometimes we checked out on our own. We learned joys of barcode scanning and whether we could do it 100% on the first try or not. We bagged the items. We walked them to a nearby vehicle, typically one that we provided for free at no charge. And sometimes we even enjoyed the drive to and from the store. We drove home, completely ignoring what economists would call sort of the lost value, the time we've given away for free. And the technology now gives us a chance to have someone else do that, do all of this for us. I mean, this has been growing for 25 years or so, where you can click, and somewhere, magically, in some building with shelves or of some type with product in them, someone gathers the items and gets them to you. Now, the questions are, especially as you look at industries like grocery, will people pay for that even if they're accustomed to the old model? Can you do it for free, or how cheaply, and still make some money in the value stream as a retailer? And then, of course, the interesting one is, what will all of this look like in 5 years? So retail is not the only industry dealing with on-demand. I mentioned, again, I spent some time in telecom. We were way in the core of the network on the transport and the fiber optic side and so on. But the technologies, I think one of the similarities I see is that technologies that once only were viable economically and so on at the scale of a core system. Think of your regional distribution centers fulfilling the needs of stores in your network, 100 stores, 200 stores, whatever. So you could afford some automation at scale for that. As you start to get closer and closer to the neighborhood scale of individual stores, it gets more challenging. But the good news is some of the technologies, and we'll talk about those as we go through, and I'm sure you'll hear a lot from other speakers as well, things that were impossible at the micro scale or smaller are true today. And you see this in the content delivery and on-demand streaming and so on, where, again, not too long ago, the model was was quite different, right? Now, clearly there was unmet demand when we all used to watch, maybe go to the cinema once a month or something, and we would wait a week for the new episode of our favorite show. So clearly there was an untapped demand, but the technology being too complex and costly, there was only so much that could be done about it. VHS tape rentals, DVDs by mail. Some of these things were pointing and hinting at the way, companies like Netflix, for example. And now if you look at the infrastructure underlying this and the battles that you see as people try to become content providers, network owners, and subscription-based systems and so on, all the way down to the device manufacturers and so on. Who could have imagined, right, this whole ecosystem 20 years ago, maybe even 15 years ago? So again, where the demand and the needs catch up with the technology, or the two start to move in lockstep, things can really take off. So one of the questions today is, can technologies like robotic piece picking unlock similar opportunities in supply chain, especially as it relates to the last mile? Because we do forget, and again, it's not too many generations ago, maybe 2 or 3 or something like that, where switchboards were common, right? So again, now no one misses that, and you can't stream video if you have to talk to the switchboard operator to make your connections, right? So the point made is that technology is moving fast, demands are always there, and it just takes imagination and a lot of hard work to get there. So today, my main theme, though, is to say to you that the last mile journey starts with the pick. So I'm imagining fulfillment centers, inventories stored, ready to go. Customers can order online. And so whether it's a regional distribution center, a large e-commerce order fulfillment center, and now that the term micro fulfillment is used quite a bit, I don't know if the old ones were the giga or mega centers, I'm not sure. But things like an ASRS, again, I assume many of you know, an automated storage and retrieval system, basically a automation that can store inventory in totes, and you can have 10,000, 50,000, 100,000 SKUs or products or more. These were once reserved, again, for large facilities, 20,000 square meters, or for the US people, a little over 200,000 square feet, up to 1 million square feet, 100,000 square meters. That's what you used to see at the regional and the large scale level, facilities that can ship $1 billion of product a year, $2 billion of product a year. So micro fulfillment is changing that, right? But again, you can take that technology that was designed and built for the large scale, and now it's affordable and viable at a smaller scale. Of course, there's folks who talk about even nano scale systems with even slightly smaller SKU count and more flexibility around locations. This is important. Now, if you can understand which products you should stage where in your network, and again, we may hear some other talks about that over time. I think that's really important as you try to scale and have multiple tiers. And drawing the analogy on communications, there's core networks, there's wide area networks, there's campus networks, and there's even your home network. So, what sort of equipment and software you need to manage and run all of these, it changes a bit as you go to scale. I will say, I'm not going to talk about standards today. I thought about having some slides, but again, how you package and compartmentalize the data or the products as they flow through these different tiers of the network may also become really important. So anyways, if nano is becoming important in micros, the sort of got critical mass today, maybe pico and femto, for those who know their metric terms, where every cellar, attic, or garage could be a fulfillment center. It's maybe a fun thought experiment to think that way. What would that look like? I don't think it's viable. It's some kind of dystopia. Maybe someone will make a movie out of it. I don't know. But anyways, when you could store 10 SKUs in your attic and get a text and then put it out on the curb, and a delivery person comes and gets it and takes it to someone else's house. I'm not sure that's the future we want, but at what point does the scale become kind of ridiculously small? It might be worth thinking about. So anyways, the last mile starts when the inventory makes the first move, because if I'm the customer, it's when I click and now the clock is running. I'm expecting to get the order in 2 hours or tomorrow, but whatever it is on the fulfillment and delivery side, as all of you know, I think listening, the clock starts. So we like to talk about the first 3 feet as the product moves from an inventory bin, a storage location, into the bag or the carton and starts making its way. And whether the picking robot itself will become absolutely ubiquitous like transistors in this new quasi-digital network, we shall see. So I'm going to show a quick video. This is from our center. I'll try to make a note. Sometimes I'll show videos from some production sites, sometimes from the lab. This is just an example. And again, not knowing where everyone who's joining is coming from and their background and interests and so on. The tote that you see, the gray tote inside the AutoStore port, this is a carousel port. It's a test setup we have in our facility. So many of you may be familiar with AutoStore. It's a cube storage ASRS type of system. And it's been around for about 20 years or so. There you just saw the robot. It went to pick something. It didn't get it on the first try. It tried again. And that's actually a nice little feature and a way to talk about what some of the characteristics of a robot picking items in a fulfillment center compared to in a factory. So this one has to deal with lots of different products. They may be sitting differently in the tote. We're not seeing the view in the tote on this video, but we'll see it in others. And in this case, it's just dropping it into a chute. It could be putting it into a carton or a bag or whatever. In this case, it's just dropping it in the tote. It's just outside the fenced area, which allows our technicians to do all kinds of things around it while the robot's working. So this is the kind of robotic automation I'm talking about. And again, one can imagine behind this port, instead of some of our office cubes, there could be a large system with 20 or 50,000 products. Or again, if it's micro fulfillment, maybe it's only 5,000. And when an order comes, the logic driving the warehouse brings the proper tote down. The robot's told, pick an item and transfer it to this order or that order, and away we go. Sorry, started the video again. We'll skip ahead. So now, again, I think that system doesn't work. It doesn't scale if it never becomes financially viable. It has to be more cost effective than the alternative. But I think what's even more important is in this last mile, you have to choose what you have your most scarce resources do. And those are the people. So they can be like the guy in black and white up on the left side of your screen. They can be picking items and scanning them from one tote to another all day, or maybe they can be putting the bags of groceries in the boot of the car that's pulled up and saying hello to the customer. You know, and there might be more value in that. Maybe the customer gets to ask a question. And again, throughout this talk, I use some visuals from companies. I'm not endorsing Walmart Grocery or Amazon Prime Delivery, but they're just convenient photos to illustrate the points. So, or again, maybe the person putting the box on your doorstep, again, there's a chance they interact with the customer. And maybe it's a more critical part of the process. In any event, if you can automate the task in the facility, moving the product, you free people up to do other things that might just enhance the customer experience. Again, so we'll take care of the first 3 feet of product movement, but the remaining 5,277 might be better use of the people in your operation. So now I'm going to talk a little bit about the technology. And a few years ago, we did this presentation where we were trying to help people understand how a robot perceives the world and how it thinks and reacts. And it's really hard to do because, as you will maybe can imagine, or I'll show some videos in a moment, the kind of people who work on computer vision and artificial intelligence, machine learning, you know, it's you can get very deep into the math and the physics and so on of how all of that works. But we all pick things up every day. I can pick up my eyeglass case here. And in fact, as I do that, and if you have things on your desk and for the rest of the day, you can do exercises where you notice, how did I grab it? Did I grab it like this? If it's on this end, I grab it different. If I set it someplace and go to get it, how does my arm move? Similarly, playing a game like this, where we have a gentleman here with a blindfold, and we give him some tongs or maybe an oven mitt, so it makes it hard for him to feel the products and have any sense of what he's doing. We have another gentleman here. He's the vision system here. So I've got a gripper, very capable gripper. I've got a brilliant vision system. And this person, we allow him just to point and touch the object that they want to have picked. And then this lady here, she is in charge of guiding, providing the intelligence to the system and guiding, making the motion plan and the grasp plan to get the other individual to pick up the item, transfer it to the other tote without dropping it, without hitting anything, and so on. So this is a fun game you can do at home. And what it forces you to realize is that if you try to put together computer vision systems, some software, some grippers, some robot arms, and make them all to work to pick things, it's harder than it looks, right? We would, in this particular game, we compared the people working in this manner to how our system worked. And the robot, of course, could beat the people, who was faster at transferring items, more reliable. Now, a person on their own, of course, does a lot better, which also gives you some hints as to how maybe you design a robot in the first place. So I'm going to take about a minute or so here. I'm going to run this video. This video goes a little deeper into the technology, which I think you'll find interesting. It has a good narration. So I'm going to let it talk, and then I'll come right back. So please hang on. We'll get this going. And I have to turn on
modules that
let me scroll back.
Real-time autonomy and control are built from core program modules that understand, plan, execute, and learn. These modules interact dynamically to create robot skills which are combined to build workflows. In a typical workflow, RightPick AI algorithms process image data, assess which picks are easiest, and recommend grasp plans, even for items it thinks are partially obstructed. Checks for obstacles to avoid bumping the tote or dislodging the item. Handles exceptions such as phantom or empty totes with confidence, and notifies the host warehouse software to take appropriate action. If a pick doesn't succeed on the first try, RightPick AI decides whether to try again or instantly switch to a backup plan for a different item. Once the item is grasped, sensor feedback confirms that the robot has it throughout the transfer motion. If needed, RightPick barcode scans items, communicates with the warehouse host to confirm each item is expected, and is told mid-cycle where to place them. To place with precision, RightPick AI must understand not only the dimensions and position of the item in the gripper, but also the vacant areas in the tote for possible placements. This eliminates damaging items and optimizes fill density. In a simple workflow, an entire cycle of this sequence is completed in 3 seconds or less.
Okay. Go back here one step.
Real-time autonomy and control are built for
Okay. So some of the points I wanted to make there, again, it's an artificial intelligence type of system. We talked about it being able to understand its environment, its scenario, its tasks. Some of this happens through APIs to the host warehouse management system as well. Combining the hand, the eye, and the brain that coordinates everything means the system can be responsible for the pick. It's self-aware, tracking itself, reporting to the host if it succeeded or failed. We have separate fleet management and visibility tools, so you could, from somewhere else in the facility, monitor and manage the robot if there's an issue. And then again, for it to be useful, we won't go deep into the technology here, but even in the 5,000 SKU example, 5,000 products, that's a wide range of items, all different sizes and shapes for this machine to pick, right? And it has to do it at a high enough rate to be cost effective, we touched on briefly, and then reliability, because your customer expects to get the items in the perfect condition, and you expect the orders to be picked properly in the first place. So just very quickly, because it looks easy when you watch videos of our system or anybody else's system. And again, I'll say there's other folks who are doing this, and I'm focusing on item picking. There's parcel picking robots, depalletizing robots. There's a lot of robots to think about that may play some role in these operations. But in terms of getting the inventory out of the tote and on its way to the customer, we're talking about an autonomous machine here. It looks like a traditional factory robot, but the same way an autonomous vehicle and a conventional automobile are entirely different. Once you take sort of the human out of the process, or in our case, you go from the factory robot where it's almost always the same product in exactly the same position and orientation, you start to change all that. You throw a lot of variability in, and it makes it harder. So again, somewhere on this automation scale, from the toaster to Rosie the Robot, if people recognize Rosie from the old cartoon show, here's what we're talking about. It's nearly fully autonomous. And again, occasionally there can be some absolute edge case where you might need to intervene and help the robot, but ideally it's going on its own. So I'll show another example. I think the previous video touched on this one. This is a facility in Japan. I'll talk to the video a little bit. Music, as much fun as that is. Paltech is a large consumer packaged goods wholesaler in Japan. They supply to many convenience stores. It's a large facility, big revenue, and so on. So we'll go ahead and see the robots in the facility. They opened this facility about 2 years ago. There's a fleet of robots. And for privacy, we kind of block out where the people are working. So you can see some lanes in this system have robots and some have people. The totes are coming from an ASRS storage system. And then the smaller totes, we'll see in just a moment here, are the blue ones are the takeaway totes. And then downstream, the orders are packed for the individual stores where they're going. So it's a good sized facility. And again, as they look at the mix of items and use the robots more, this is one of their first facilities. So there's always opportunity to add more. But let's look at a couple things here. So again, you'll notice the different types of items. I will say in the Japanese market, even a cosmetic blemish on the product makes it unsellable. So if you look at this pic here, you see it's a suction only. So at the warehouse management software level, they've made some choices and recognized some items that are more delicate than others. That box for that type of product is a very thin cardboard, is very flimsy. And if you crinkle it, it won't be put on the shelf in the store. So their customer would see that as a failure to deliver properly. So again, there are things you can do with a robot. It's hard to tell in this video, but the fingers on our system have some compliance and soft, they're of a soft material, so they can kind of form gently around the objects. And there's choices of grasps. Again, just the way we grab things differently without thinking too much, the system has to be able to do that in real time. Okay. Come back here. And here we go. So I'm not going to dive into this too much, but again, and I think there's a lot of different technologies involved in the last mile. But when you get to autonomous systems, and again, maybe someday autonomous vehicles or drones will deliver things to some percentage of customers. But in this this item handling robot, these are some of the key things here. And I tend to think of it as tasks. You know, and the task requires certain skills to do it. And I had a Ted Lasso joke here. Said, I'm not, a Premier League footballer plays at a higher skill level than someone just entering a youth academy, right? So same thing with these robots. Today we have a certain skill set and they can do pretty simple tasks in the warehouse. As you start to look, could it do this? Could it do that? Again, keep in mind, sometimes this extra skills you need ramp up pretty quickly. So for example, here's another facility. This video kind of kicked off just before I started speaking. Might skip ahead a little bit. So facility in the Netherlands. Again, we're picking from an auto store. So in this case, you can see now there's 6 containers. We could be picking inventory items from any of those. There's quite a few robot cells. This is an online pharmacy business. The products are a nice size and shape. After we pick the items, you'll see that we do capture a barcode. Now, our system, much like a person working at this task, doesn't absolutely need to know what the product is. It can help, but they check the barcode. This then communicates with the warehouse software because the retailer knows what item is supposed to go in the order. Once that's confirmed, we're signaled back to the robot. It finishes the placement into the outbound box, and away you go. The order's on its way. These are just some examples. Sometimes it's helpful to visualize. So very quickly, I'll touch on a couple of other themes. So if we're building these systems, autonomous robots, you have to get them out to customers in the field. There are system integrators out there who often automate warehouses. I mentioned Element Logic. They're one of the, they were the first auto store integrator and someone that we've worked with quite a bit. And again, they have to rethink the work cell design a bit because now with the robot, it has different limitations than a person. In particular, You may say, why can't it just move around a little bit, X, Y, Z around the floor, like a person could take a step in any direction? This complicates the design quite a bit. We tend to work from a fixed position. So they have to reconsider things like the cell layout. We have to work together on the software integration and so on and so forth. Talk about other examples, things like sortation systems. There's all kinds of autonomous mobile robotic systems coming out. I show a couple of examples. Again, this one is, you see it says rough cut here, something we were filming at our facility recently, where these robots from NVIDIA, which can fetch cartons off of shelves. So if you don't have an ASRS, but you have static shelving with some cartons, you could get AMRs to, grab those off the shelf, bring them over. Robot can finish off orders and keep moving. There's some other examples. Talk about warehouse software and integration in different levels. The people at Manhattan Associates, who you probably know from their work in supply chain software over the years in retail, recently published this article in their magazine Commerce Trends about different mobile robots and picking robots and how they're changing things. And Manhattan started this Manhattan Automation Network, which we're a participant. And it talks about, well, how are the robots going to talk to the warehouse software? Because they have to be an integrated part of the system. Here's a quick video from another company. This is a US company, Svt Robotics. And they have a great idea, I think, which is, if you have WCS software and it wasn't written with the idea of having different robot systems, disparate systems working under the same roof in the same facility, they've built some adapters for that. And here's just an example where literally you can't hear what she's saying, but within an hour or so of setup, they can have a mobile robot. This one's from Svt Robotics, bring a tote over. The robot is told to pick an item. It has to know that the tote is there to place the item and so on. So this is some of the communications that SVT is bringing into the mix here. And let's see, there we go. Okay, so I've given you, at least hopefully convinced you that there's something called the autonomous piece picking robots that might become a big part, and we think there will be in the MFCs of the future and some of the kicking off the last mile. What will the balance look like? Will it involve, I don't know, custom packaging? We had some slides that we kick around from time to time talking about how the container obviously changed transport and logistics. It's been in the news lately, not in a positive way, but container shipping, intermodal, and so on. Well, will electric vehicles of a particular size become the new, the new containers of the last mile? I don't know. Again, I'm not endorsing that. I'm just saying it as an example. I was looking at this example of some lockers. Again, when my wife teases me, she says, you get all these men, organizing grocery shopping automation, and most of them don't shop for groceries and don't understand it. So that may or may not be true. But certainly in urban environments, there may not be a place to put the order that's safe and secure. So how do you solve that problem? I think that's an interesting one. It's not as important out here in the suburbs where I live, but in other areas it is. Will drones deliver packages? I don't know. Probably at some point in time. Here's an example from Australia where they deliver coffee, which I could use right now. But I think there's a lot of opportunities here. Again, some of the other speakers may touch on these more than I will. But and there's also the software that patches them all together. I think there's opportunities for standalone software companies that do optimization of all of these pieces. And I'd just like to close by saying, as this evolves, and again, like our friends in video on demand and streaming and so on, it's going to, I think, be some topsy-turvy years as all of this gets sorted out, and some models will work better than others. But I think I'd like to leave you with the idea that you can count on picking robots for the first 3 feet of the last mile. So thank you very much again to Nick and the Logistics Point for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you very much, Vince. And just a few questions. One will be, what type of products can you pick in terms of, is there a limitation on the type of shape or the type of product? Does it always have to come in a box?
Mm-hmm. No, it doesn't have to come in a box. We tend to think of what we pick well are items that you could typically grab with one hand. The payload limit of our gripper is about 2 kilograms. So that's the upper limit today. Again, I mentioned you will see videos of people with, bigger robot arms and giant multi-suction cup grippers grabbing larger boxes and parcels. We've done some proof of concept on that as well. But for our productized system, 2 kilograms, I did make a note here. Dimensions, we picked things as small as like 1 centimeter on a side, up to about 30 centimeters. Sometimes we can do a little larger than that, but that's the typical range.
And you also in the beginning, and not only in the beginning, but you were talking about networks and building networks. How important is it to have all your parts of the network working together? And how easy is it if you have different areas, different software, different automation?
Yeah. Well, let's see. Yeah, I guess, and that depends a lot. If you were starting completely from scratch, it's one of the blessings, I guess, of companies that start from scratch and have no history and no legacy network, right? They can try to build everything or choose the latest versions of everything. It's a complicated question. Actually, the other thing too is retailers and even transport companies. Sometimes you grow by acquisition, so you inherit facilities and systems that are disparate. There's no, I wish I had a perfect answer for that one. I mean, I think you have to choose your battles, and you have to choose wisely. You could spend all your time forcing some complex integration or rationalizing systems, and if serving your customer in the near term can be done without that, you may put some of that on the back burner. But I think it helps to stand back. In fact, sometimes I think you could hire consultants or guys who've been in these other networking industries and pull them together and start sharing ideas for how did you get through these problems? Because a lot of this has been encountered, the networks for financial services industries, even before video on demand and so on. I mean, there's people who've had to wrestle with a lot of these problems. They haven't had to deal with the vagaries of odd-shaped items and some of the lead and lag times. When I make a phone call on my cell phone, the connection's instant. Products, of course, come from a factory, make many intermediate transitions and stops along the way. But even then, in telecom networks, you take it for granted. The interdomain, like when you call on your cell phone wireless from the UK and you call me in the States, it goes through landlines, submarine cables, pops out over here, and eventually finds me. There's 5 network providers in the middle. All of those transactions clear automatically, right? So, and instantly. So I don't know. Long answer, but that just means that I don't have a good, clear one.
And finally, and you spoke also about it, but when we're talking about technology, automation, somehow we can never skip the question about people. Do you think that at the end we will really see autonomous also vehicles at the last mile and at the first mile only?
Yeah, well, I'm always grateful as challenging as building an autonomous piece picking machine and working with the folks at RightHand. We got a lot of brilliant people. We don't have to worry about a kid on a bicycle pulling in front of the robot while it's trying to pick an item, right? Or a deer or somebody's dog crossing the road or whatever. So I don't know, autonomous vehicles, there's massive effort and work on it. Will they be able to go door to door all by themselves? Well, again, we face in our own world the reliability standard. Like, again, if you're 95% good at picking items, it's useless. If you're 97, 98 and barely tolerable, somewhere better than 99%, 99.5, 99.9, it's kind of the state of the art. It's where we are on a number of our projects. And I think what you really need to succeed, right? So can autonomous vehicles delivering door to door be 99.9% reliable? Or do you want to risk losing the customer, right? So I think that's the question. What's the downside of those odd edge cases, and how do you design around them? So I don't know. Maybe there's some chunk. If it's not 5,277 feet, maybe there's autonomous vehicles covering portions of the last mile.
Well, thank you very much. And people will be able to learn a bit more also later from RightHand Robotics. Vince, thank you very much for joining us today. And just in a few seconds, I will be joined by a panel of last mile experts who look whether either in implementing technologies or have had experience with technologies being implemented in their companies. Vince, thank you very much. And we will be back in just a second.
Thank you.
And now I'm joined by 5 gentlemen from different companies. I will start introducing them with Arthur Zargarian, who is one of the co-founders of Parcel Tracker. Next to him is Nick Fox, head of logistics in Link Theory. Michael Hegeman, who is vice president channel operations in eTrack Technologies. Fritz Moyes from Premonition, who is responsible for partnerships, as well as Martin Pecar from OmniOpti, who works, who is the founder of OmniOpti. But my first question will be with Nick. What is your experience when it comes to implementing technology for the last mile?
Yes, it's a $1 million question there. I would say the experience, it's essential that the detail is done. And what I've found is in some implementations in the past, when large amounts of big decisions are made, but large amounts of small decisions aren't made, that's when the things tend to go wrong. I think in the last presentation, which I thought was absolutely excellent, he made a very poignant point when he said there's lots of guys implementing robots to pick groceries, but they don't understand how anything about groceries, which I thought was very poignant. When we've done technology implementations, it's very important that the technology side of it understands what a warehouse guy actually knows or what a delivery driver.
I think that Nick's connection wasn't broke a bit. I will go now to Michael if his connection is okay. Michael,
It seems to be, yes.
Yes.
Good morning. Good afternoon.
Good morning. Speaking on what also Nick and Vince were talking about, how important is it for people who are implementing technology or selling a technology solution to know what's happening?
Yeah, and as at eTrack, what we've found is the disparity of different technologies that are being deployed out there. What's one fallacy we have in the transportation industry or even in the final mile industry is all these different technologies trying to come together to ultimately be able to provide a product and or a solution to an end customer, right? And so what we've done at eTrack is try and provide or narrow that gap in the technology marketplace today by creating an environment where any type of technology will be able to be put into a middleware type of environment from eTrack that allows any type of shipping technology to integrate with any type of final mile technology out there today. And so that's the business we're in, is to be able to integrate that environment and provide a seamless, transaction all the way from order entry all the way through to proof of delivery.
And Rick, with you, when you're talking about partnerships, what are the first things when you tell people when it comes to partnering on technology?
Well, what we've seen, and I think Vince mentioned that quite nicely in his presentation as well, that it's a lot about the data that flows through the network, because all these siloed solutions, and I think that's basically also what Michael was saying, all the siloed solutions across the supply chain only work if you integrate them across the supply chain and you have the data exchange. And so far what we've seen in a lot of cases that the data goes from left to right, but there's a lot of opportunities to also create more feedback loops to really, in for instance, the postal and parcel industry, integrate the information you pick up in the last mile and improve your sorting plans based on that. So that's typically one thing we see. And I think to your earlier question, what we also see is that change management is a big part. So implementing new technologies for us who know and understand that technology is quite easy, and there's usually a few champions in the organization, but the people on the floor. And when it comes to the last mile, specifically drivers, and I think Martin is probably shaking his head as well. Drivers know their way around their city, they say, until you tell them that there's better ways to do that. And convincing them of this better way versus the old ways of doing is sometimes a challenge to actually get the most out of your technology.
And Martin, you were, as Rick said, you were shaking your head. Yes. Is it that hard to convince people?
Well, depends. People are different. So some like improvements and some just love the status quo. So this is indeed one of the most difficult obstacles or challenges. How to move the ones that don't want to change. That goes from the individuals to organizations, or let's say subsystems within organizations also. Doing things the way you've done them since forever, it's a very tricky and very costly decision sometimes. So yeah, we just want to help them and somehow propose better solutions, how to do things more efficiently with the resources that you have, without disrupting a lot, the processes. Of course, the processes are complex and it's difficult to modify them, but still within the same framework, you can still improve things.
And Arthur, we were talking about legacy systems and new players. You're one of the new players. So what is your take on last mile and technology?
So we've come to the game in last mile from a very different perspective. So oftentimes people are considering couriers and the supply chain, but they're often forgetting about the endpoint of the delivery. So, thinking about parcel lockers, where are the parcels being dropped off and how are things being handled? So in a world where, we're all pushing for 1 day, 2 day deliveries, oftentimes what we see is packages are being held at receptions within buildings for a very long time before they are getting handed off to tenants, residents, staff members. And that can be a problem in quite a few industries, actually. For example, fast fashion, you need to get your items within the building moved around quickly. So what we've done is we've really worked on the parcel tracking within these big buildings, within these big big sites, where we basically try to improve the communication between the courier, the receptionist, which is the landlord or the operator of the building, and the actual endpoint and the recipient. And what we do is we make sure the reception stay decluttered, that people are actually getting their packages on time, and that buildings can basically handle the volumes of parcels they're getting. And I was actually looking at some statistics we had, is that before COVID struck, let's say October 2019, I mean, basically that 2 years ago, we've seen about a 50% increase in the number of parcels received per individual in any given site. So, I mean, the statistics are quite insane. Like the deliveries are increasing and just endpoints are not going to be able to handle the delivery volume. So we're looking at different solutions there. And we're doing primarily a software-based solution, but, parcel lockers, parcel rooms, there's a range of solutions out there to help these buildings.
And Nick, hoping that the network will be better. Continuing on what you were trying to say before, but also how hard is it to actually implement all of these technologies? And speaking, Arthur mentioned the word fashion, which I'm sure that you have quite a lot to say about that.
Yes, apologies for my Wi-Fi before. Yes, I mean, obviously extremely important. There's a funny trend going on, because I appreciate what's said about fast fashion, but there's also with higher end fashion, where I'm currently working at Link Theory, is a high-end fashion retail. There's new ideas about having what they call concierge services, whereby and it's a very interesting last mile concept, whereby somebody orders maybe 5 different pieces from 5 different fashion brands, and they go along with a very well-dressed and very polite concierge who takes them for somebody to try on. They can try on 5 different things, and they keep the ones they like and they send back the ones they don't like. So when we're talking about last mile, there is an awful lot of innovation going on. And that's almost counterintuitive, whereby this is not the fast fashion last mile. This is a sort of last mile thing that's, for the high end of the market, and a very interesting way of doing things. And I think one of the quotes from, I think it was Google or something like that, they said, look at what the rich people are doing and everybody else will be doing it in 5 years' time. So I think there's plenty of opportunity. But in terms of the implementation side of it, it could be that new concept of concierge. It could be the fast fashion that we're talking about. We're currently implementing post-Brexit some new technology in the Netherlands. And we're going through, it's very much the same sort of thing. We have to do the line by line detail to make sure the first line managers are involved. Everybody has got skin in the game with what they're doing. And everybody understands the detail. And I think we'll, in terms of operations in this sort of thing, we'll never get away from those issues. And you sort of have to relearn the lesson every time you do an implementation, I would say.
And going back to Michael and Nick talked about what will happen in 5 years' time. Do you think it's easy to predict how technology in the last mile will look in 5 years' time?
I think it's very difficult to predict, because if you look at the many, many years leading up to the next 5 years, what have we seen in terms of technology? We've seen very disparate technologies being deployed across the final mile out there today, right? And so that is one of the big problems within the industry today, that there's an opportunity out there for companies to try and solve, right? And do I have a proprietary self-built order entry system? Do I have a proprietary, self-built proof of delivery system? Guess what? My shipping system doesn't talk to my proof of delivery system. It never has. And right, which leaves us with a technology gap that has to be solved somehow, some way, to be able to support. I think Arthur was talking about the crazy numbers that we're seeing in e-commerce. Well, absolutely. I don't think that's going to stop with the pandemic and the coronavirus and everything that's going on. The numbers are going to continue to go up. And I think this is going to be a new way that the end consumer is going to be purchasing goods from us. In the previous presentation, the robotics, right? We have to get better at getting products out. What's one of the fallacies that we're seeing right now in the industry is the inability for us to get product from a ship to the end user today, right? Just saw yesterday, we've got thousands of ships in the United States sitting outside the port in Long Beach, California, with products sitting on them that we can't get to today. Well, guess what? Somehow we have to get to those products, and somehow those shippers, those manufacturers have to get those products to their users to get paid, right? They have to sell those products. And so I think being able to somehow tie the shipper to, the technology that the shipper and the manufacturer is creating to the final mile is going to be a key component to whether we're successful today. And in, you asked 5 years to answer your question. For 5 years down the road, someone's going to have to solve that technology gap that's out there today.
And to Frick now, how can we solve that technology gap? What would be the first thing if we have to try and introduce steps?
Michael just inspired me. I see those big Sikorsky helicopters unloading ships at sea instead of at the dock.
Yeah, exactly. I mean,
the only thing is
the cost to do that, right? And what's going to happen?
Exactly. Yeah.
The price to you and I is going to go through the roof.
Yeah. I think one of the things, and Vince mentioned that in his presentation, I think what we're facing is the scarcity of resources. I mean, it's the same at the ports in the US, in the UK. I think at Felixstowe there's a similar problem with ships lining up. There's a limited supply of containers and container ships, and that works its way all the way through the last mile, where people are scarce, vans are scarce, fuel is getting more and more expensive. So I think there's a lot of things that are going to be software driven, like the actual optimization throughout the processes and expectation management throughout the value chain, from the minute something is manufactured to what the end customer actually expects. Because you probably have the same in your countries. There's a storm of these last mile delivery companies delivering something within 10 to 50 minutes. And I hear students or even kids at school are ordering bananas one at a time, getting them delivered in 10 minutes. And they figured out that there's, especially when these companies are entering the market, they give you 15 euros to try their service. And then they pass that 15 euros around, because each time you install the app, you get another 15 euros. So there's a lot of things happening. But I truly believe, and I think that's also to Michael's point, and maybe the point of all of us, that there's a lot of opportunity in integrating a lot of existing technology. So there's a lot of things still working not optimally between each other. And although I do believe there's going to be more autonomous solutions in the last mile, personally, I think it's going to be a long way before it's efficiently run. So the Starship robots and all the initiatives we've seen over the last 5 to 10 years to efficiently run them, I think that's going to be a long way off. And the question is if there's not a lot of things that you can optimize with current technologies. So it's more about the combination of current and new technologies with the operators and the people involved to make that as efficient as possible, than introducing more and more new technologies, I would say.
And Martin, two things that Frick and Vince also touched upon is the question of when does the scale become so small that it's no longer efficient and doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, well, it's a business decision. What's important for you and what you're willing to invest in. What we're experts in is somehow make the most out of what you have. Utilize your resources in the best possible way, and especially use them with several objectives. Like when delivering, time, distance, costs, emissions. All those things can be optimized simultaneously. But what I also wanted to get back on what the previous speakers have been saying, there are a lot of problems and a lot of challenges, but there's also a lot of creativity and a lot of innovation. But what I see lacking is the willingness of the companies somehow to invite these new solutions. So all the companies, us included, are trying to push our solutions to the companies, to the big corporations, and they're fighting back, But I would love to see them inviting, pulling us, we have a challenge, we have an issue, who's going to help us, doing more like hackathon style challenges or something like that, offering problems and then finding people and companies which are able to solve those problems. That would really speed up the process a lot, I'm sure.
And Arthur, also your take on when does the scale gets too small to even consider it as viable option?
A funny thing there, Freak said, people ordering bananas. I'm going to be honest, I've been one of those people. So there's a lot of venture capital money going into these companies, which are giving you a lot of discounts and deliveries, and it actually becomes cheaper to buy from these like delivery companies than it does from supermarkets. So when the venture capitalists start paying, why not? But I really don't know. It's an interesting thing. Again, like Martin said, it's about the business decision that companies make. Oftentimes companies will have loss leaders. Oftentimes they will incur the cost, but on the big scale and the grand scale, they'll be making money because people will be building a habit of ordering things online, right? And having them delivered. So it's really a question of scale, how big they can get. And then the bigger you get, ironically, the smaller the delivery you can make. In my opinion, there's more optimization, which goes into play. And then there's some clever things with, we were discussing, micro fulfillment centers, nano fulfillment centers. I'd even say these nano fulfillment centers are already a thing of the present. I mean, there's some moving fulfillment centers nowadays that you have, and they're testing them out with some. I think it's some. In Turkey, they have some supermarkets which are basically like on wheels, effectively, and they'll do the fulfillment like that. So it really depends, and technology will come in and find solutions. And I don't know if you'll be able to order banana, and that'll be economically viable. But maybe, I don't know, cigarettes, alcohol, you can get a bottle delivered, and that will be economically viable, for example.
And starting from Nick, but the question will be for everyone when we're talking about technology, and very often we hear the word artificial intelligence, machine learning, and there's behind all of these terms somehow stays there is everything. They mean everything, and at the same time it feels that they don't mean anything. So Nick, when you hear about it, what is your idea?
Yeah, big question. I think one of the things that's coming through is, and especially some of the points that Michael raised, is that almost the last mile starts with the first mile. And when we're talking about reducing things, we're talking about reducing supply chains as well. And we're talking about large-scale integrations that almost sort of knock out the need for some parts of the supply chain. I don't quite know how that ultimately works. But a lot of the stuff that we've been doing and we've been finding in implementations is how much stuff you don't actually need and you can do away with over time. And I think with one of the things the technologies can do will be to do this. Improved manufacturing or more efficient manufacturing might onshore manufacturing and reduce the need to have helicopters removing containers from ships outside Long Beach and this sort of thing. When we're talking about nano warehouses, smaller warehouses, well, also smaller manufacturing plants that are more locally based. These will also come in with the sustainability issues and everything else that's being raised. So I think if you look at it, last comment I would make, if you look at it in the whole entire supply chain, really the last mile begins with the first mile and all of those big strategic issues. So another interesting 5 years, I would say.
And Michael, what is your take on the words machine learning and AI?
My perspective on that is that it's great to have those acronyms thrown out there, but how do you use it, right? I personally feel that there's got to be some sort of warehouse where this information all the way from, first mile all the way to final mile, right, needs to reside. And you need to be able to collect that information because, again, going back, you're going to have disparate systems throughout the entire supply chain out there today. So someone, somehow, somewhere, that information has to reside. And before you can do AI, before you can do predictive analytics, before you can do machine learning and things like that, that information has to be gathered somewhere and put in a meaningful way by which we can do those types of analytical and predictive analytic type environments out there today. And so information collection, I think, is going to be a key part to be able to even provide those types of services as we move forward throughout the industry today.
And Frick, how about your idea?
Yeah, no, I fully support what Nick and Michael are saying. I think there's a lot of course, always big terminology, and everybody now has, especially to get funded, at least 3 acronyms and usually even more in their business description. But I also do see, I mean, you also mentioned vision shortly, I mean, the improvements of accuracy, especially in parcel and postal industries, of using vision technology. And there's still so much potential to really understand the size, the shape, etc. Parcels, both in the way, as RightHand Robotics and Finch showed, of picking things, but also all the way through the value chain to make sure that you use your resources efficiently as possible. And what we see, of course, with things like machine learning and AI, that there's been enormous steps as well, that the speed at which you can actually improve systems and which you can actually improve operations has been partly supported by these technologies. But it's, in the end, it's all in the implementation and the communication, as the previous speaker said, because just putting it on your website and saying that you're doing that is completely different from really using it to the possibilities it can create. So lots of potential, but as with everything, there's a lot of hype around it, and usually hype comes to a certain point when it starts to disappoint people, when it doesn't deliver all these high expectations.
And Martin, you were also nodding again.
Yes, a lot of hype also, but generally, well, I'm a mathematician and I come from Slovenia, which I think has the highest density of data scientists. So a lot of my friends and colleagues are top experts in this field. But generally, AI is just a tool that can be used to solve certain problems. And getting back to my previous comment is we need challenges and we need tasks and goals that we want to achieve. And then we can apply artificial intelligence to achieve that. It's a rather simple tool, very developed by now already, which can be used just to solve certain tasks. But we need those tasks. And this will come from the business side. The businesses, the corporations need to say, okay, we want to improve, I don't know, the picking, or we want to improve the accuracy of estimated time of arrival, or something else. And then artificial intelligence can be employed to deliver the solution for that. But it has to, the pool has to come from the market, from the need.
And Arthur, adding to the machine learning and AI question, but also picking on what Martin was talking about, pulling? Do you feel that companies, bigger companies, need to start?
I'm guessing he was going to ask, do bigger companies need to start pulling a bit more?
I think Nick was blended out by an angry AI there.
By angry AI, yeah. I guess I'll answer the question. Hi, Nick. I guess you were going to ask if bigger companies have to start presenting us more issues and pulling solutions rather than having us force them upon them. Yeah, definitely. I mean, we work with both logistics and real estate. We're helping real estate, manage logistics effectively. We're blending the two worlds together. And what we're seeing is there is an abundance of solutions and not enough demand traditionally. Not all solutions are made equal and not all are great, but the market does have to be open-minded, does have to present us some challenges, and does have to accept them. Now, of course, there's a cost to implementing solutions, and also they have a million things to worry about as well. So it's understandable that they're not super open-minded about bringing on new things when they have other fires in their household they're trying to put out. And regarding AI, what I would say is, so my background is in robotics and computer science, and what I would say is that oftentimes AI is clever statistics, and it's all mathematics basically. It's probability and statistics, and like when we're doing pathfinding, it's these A-star algorithms, which are basically running heuristics and trying to find a path. When I would say really kind of the traditional idea of AI applies is for things like computer vision, when we have to use really deep neural networks for the things that, for example, RightHand Robotics are doing. We're running, for example, neural networks for some of our computer vision. And then there's also on a strategic level where the AI can apply, which is predictive analytics, better predicting, delivery times, better and kind of making these decisions for companies, helping them make decisions from data they're getting. But it gets a bit blurred between statistics at this point and actual, neural networks and these really deep kind of AI concepts. So it really, you have to see, are you trying to apply it on a tactical level, a strategic level? Are we talking about statistics really? Are we talking about probability, or are we talking about really, really deep tech, the kind of stuff that DeepMind is working on, the kind of stuff that, you need like a bunch of data scientists, which know their calculus as well, really well. It really depends, like most things in this industry, it depends. It's very specific to the situation.
Well, this is all the time we have for now, but thank you very much, and thank people for watching. But in just a minute, we were going to talk with Tom Fiorita from Point Pickup Technologies about why retailers need to own their data. Thank you very much to our panelists, and we will be back in just a minute.
Thank you, Nick.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Great day. Thank you.
My name is Tom Fiorita. I'm the CEO of Point Pickup Technologies. I'm also the founder. I am excited for the opportunity today to address such an esteemed and important audience. Our mission at Point Pickup is to bring the consumers back to the retailers' native platforms so they, the enterprise, can control the customer experience and keep all the data and revenue with their own company. So the bottom line for retailers, you need to own your own brand to own your business. Point Pickup and several other companies are firmly positioned and focused on only one objective, and that is the retailer's ability to offer any of these services on behalf of themselves to gain full control of all of the consumer experiences and data. I think the key word really is acceleration. So what this really did was adoption and behavior for online purchasing and, of course, same day and home delivery was accelerated. But the only other factor I'll tell you, I think it opened up different demographic groups that perhaps didn't think in the past that they would be part of this trend. Companies said, hey, Tom, If you can help me fulfill, can your drivers go shop? Can you offer me the technology for my folks to even shop? But from a macro basis, you're seeing a lot of companies catch up now over time. If you're going to be a retailer that's going to be better than the next retailer, it's not because you have delivery and they don't, because everybody will have delivery now. So it goes back to how well can you manage the process and how well can you manage the data. You probably hear a lot out there with companies that talk about data analytics. You hear companies talk about predictive analytics. This is the differentiator. Everybody will have data. What can you do with the data? Think about the data now on the purchasing side that now interacts with inventory. We can look at now in our systems to generate more revenue, but to make a better customer experience. You order hamburgers. It asks you, it waits, you haven't ordered ketchup. Heinz ketchup now will say they will pay for this position. It will pop up on a coupon for Heinz ketchup. So what is happening? One, you're helping the customer. They forgot about the ketchup. Two, Heinz ketchup is now paying the retailer for that position to sell it. And three, you've just sold another item. This is called the CPG data. It is extraordinarily valuable. If you think about trading markets, I came from Wall Street, and not every stock or not every city and not every market are the same. So how do we build and how do we use technologies to efficiently operate in suburban areas, urban areas, areas that have traffic issues? Is all about performance. If we look at machine learning correctly and we use it in the proper manner, we are going to absolutely increase performance. I look at machine learning in my own company for three factors. One is, how can we reduce cost or increase profit? How can we decrease time, whether it's a driver's time, whether it's my operating center time, but time. So you have cost, time, and number three is performance. If you can increase your margin and reduce time, but you don't increase performance, it is a waste. So what I want to try to explain to everybody, you must complete and you must absolutely look at all three aspects to be able to solve a certain problem. So cost, time, and performance are paramount to the success of really using machine learning in the proper manner. So if I can leave you with something that may sound a little bit harsh, and this is basically to retailers, I think you have to take a look at three areas. You have to look at coordination and cooperation with all of your vendors. I think you have to look at it as a full, number two, an ecosystem. It's not going to just be delivery. It'll be some BOPUS. It'll be autonomous. It'll be drones. It'll be incremental sales. It'll take an ecosystem to accomplish this. And it's also going to take the understanding of how to use data and the coordination of it. If a retailer today does not embrace the native use of their own sites, controlling their customer and their own brands, they will be out of business in 5 years.
And thanks very much to Tom for this short introduction to retail and data. You will be able to watch an extended version of Tom's presentation on our YouTube channel. If you haven't subscribed there, make sure that you do. This is all the time that we have for today for Last Mile and Technology. But on the 26th of October, next Tuesday, we are talking about sustainability, and we're going to look at how companies can purchase e-cargo bikes, as well as how a city in the UK, Brighton and Hove, is introducing sustainable last mile operations right now. Thank you very much to all of our speakers and participants, and I'm looking forward to seeing you as well on the 26th of October next Tuesday.